With this shot here, I'm going to show you how I go about fine-tuning an image in terms of retouching. I'm going to make a blank layer first of all, which I'll just call my retouching layer, like so. And then from there, we're going to zoom in, Control plus or Command plus to 100%. And you can see the detail there is looking pretty amazing. So, we're then going to use a combination of our spot healing brush, patch tool and clone stamp tool effectively. So we're just going to go for the healing brush tool to start with, making sure that current and below or all layers is selected in terms of actually making a selection for sampling. And I'm then just going to go in and effectively retouch these bits of pollen. I'm using quite a hard brush here, so I'll actually decrease the spacing and decrease the hardness a little bit. And I'm just going in and just tidying up the areas that are going to be problematic. There's some parts of it you don't want to get rid of, but these little bits of pollen and things like that can get cloned out or healed, as the case may be, and that still retains good detail in there. So you can have a look around here and see if there's anything else that's going to be problematic at all. And if you can't quite get it with the healing brush tool, then flick to the likes of the clone stamp tool, and then just go in and again make sure that you're on all layers, and just quick tidying up. And there's probably a little bit too fine-tuned going into that, but just having a brief scan around, just checking on little bits of information and tidying up different parts of the flower. Just going to go back to the healing brush tool now so we get the texture. Especially if you're going to be printing quite big, it's worth taking the time. Now you can see even like so these petals here are starting to degrade somewhat. I mean, I am not too worried about that as much, so it's just little things that look as if they're out of place. I mean, an actual flower starting to sort of decay, I don't think it's too much of a problem. Maybe, you know, people who are into more flower photography might disagree, but for my purposes, and you'll see I'm just sampling and working the direction that the texture of the flower is actually going to. Again, you can see right to the tips there's still detail there, which is what you look for in a good exposure. And then working our way back up and get some just marks and things that need effectively work through. And I'm just using a mouse here, I'm not even using a graphics tablet, not on this occasion. And then zoom back out and just check things out. Maybe this one down here does need a little bit of retouching. So the likes of here, we'll just sort of take some of the marks off, just camouflage things in a little bit. Just sampling here, pressing Alt or Option, and then just drawing things in so that we're just kind of building up the petal again. And if I just clone out that little bit at the edge there, it's not as noticeable. Same over here. Again, just little movements, giving streak effects, just to kind of build up the petal detail again. That print, it'll not be too huge, but that's looking pretty good. And again, anything here, little specular highlights or something that just don't quite work out, you could then tidy up. Maybe little bits up here or whatever, but you don't want to lose too much because you can end up destroying the look of the flower. But just little bits of the pollen and things like that, you can effectively clone out and just generally improve and retouch as much of the image as humanly possible. That's looking pretty good. So there you go, that one's effectively retouched. We've been working in the Photoshop document, so again there's all the mistakes and there they go again, and I can just do Command or Control S, save them, and that's that effectively retouched out the way. Close it down. If we go back into our bridge, we can then go on to look at this shot here, and there's the PSD version there, so we'll just double click on that, open it up. I've got this option here in the Mac to hide others to get rid of the bridge in the background, and you can see we've got damage up here to the petal at the top. So once again, create a new layer for retouching. Just gives you ultimate flexibility for rubbing out your mistakes later if it doesn't quite work out for you. So we'll just add the word layer, click on it, and then start the retouching. So we've got there, and a few other bits and pieces. So again, zoom in to 100%, and you can see the detail there is looking really, really good. And again, sample, and then it's just a case of I'm just doing a sort of forwards and backwards painting method. And if it doesn't quite work out, do Command R or Control R, and then maybe work it the opposite way. If it's too obvious, again, Command or Control R, or take it back a little stage or two, and then just sample. And all we're effectively doing is just disguising specific parts of the plant, all the marks on the plant, and there we go. And because I'm working to the direction of the actual petal itself, it becomes easily disguised. Then we've got a few dirty little marks down here, a few in there, a bit more subtle. It's looking okay. One thing you could also do is work on a slightly larger level and actually go in with the patch tool and then sample, round about from where you want to work to. And what you need to be doing with that is work on the original layer with the patch tool. Wonder why it wasn't working there. You can see the difference there, and blend it in. So there's before and after with the patch tool. Actually working probably a better job. You get a little bit of a repeating pattern there. So if you work on that basis and your patch tool works directly on the layer, what you can then do is go down to like the eraser or whatever and erase the information that you've effectively applied, keeping other bits and pieces in. And you'll see we've got a repeating pattern there. So what we can then do is go back in with the spot healing brush tool, or rather the healing brush tool is probably a better option, and then just get rid of that a little bit, and that's made a better job of it. So it just depends on what tool you want to effectively use, but what I have done is I've moved the point of sharpness down a bit. You have to be careful of that as well. So again, just go in and any little bits and pieces. We've got another piece here that looks as if it could be a job for the patch tool, so back on the original background layer into the patch tool, watching our edge somewhat because we don't want to disturb it, and around a bit there, that's blending it back in. Yep, looking pretty good. And all I'm going to do is just do that little area there, move it up, try and get it blending in as much as possible. Did it work? Not really. We'll just go back a stage on that one. Probably what I'm better doing is just going in, sampling there, and just working back just to blend that in there. So just scanning it around at 100%, quite happy with that. Working down the stem, looking good. And then all we want to do is just have a quick look, a little bit wider, 33.3%, any kind of marks, but it's all blurred out anyway, so that's looking pretty good. And again, that's that image retouch, so there's before and there's after in terms of the retouching. Command or Control S, and that PSD is now done. And then I can go back into my bridge, and then from there we'll flick to the stones. I'm going to take the PSD of that, and we'll just do some final retouches on that as well. Once again, I'm just going to use the hide others option to get bridge trimmed away from the background. So we're going to zoom in. Remember these little bits down here, once again, blank retouching layer. Always good to name your layers. And then again, just then, quick tidies up. Makes such a difference. You can even see there's a little bits of sensor dust there, which are harder to distinguish, but they do need cleaned up. Just go in and tidy things up. Now what's the difference between the likes of that, and that? Well, you can see there on the stone, but you can also see where the stone's chipped and things like that, but it's just little marks that kind of would distract from the eye as well, that you want to effectively tidy up. I'm just alt and sampling any little specular highlights of that, they're going as well. And then we'll zoom back out. I could take away, well, I think I probably will take away at least one or two of these because they're a little bit distracting, so we'll tone them down. Don't want to take them all away, but get the worst of them. And then zoom back out. See, that looks a little bit better there. So there's before, you can see quite distracting, and then after, nice and cleaned up. So there you go, one stone fine-tune retouched. Now, if I wanted to be really nitpicky, I could also go in and work on this area in here to clean up. But I quite like this speckling going on across here. So I'm just going to leave it where it is. Tiny little bit of sensor dust there, which I'll take away. I think that's pretty much it. Just tidy up a couple other wee bits and pieces about. And sample there. Zoom back out. Command S or Control S to save. And that's the retouching effectively done.